The Shabbat before Purim is a special one. It's called Shabbat Zachor, after the first words of the special maftir taken from the book of Deuteronomy, Zachor, et asher asa lecha Amalek. Remember what Amalek did to you on the way when you left Egypt. According to the book of Esther, Haman is a descendant of Amalek, and so we read this passage always on the Shabbat before Purim to prepare for the holiday. But there is a halachic curiosity about this reading. With most Torah readings, there is an obligation for the community to read the Torah, but not necessarily for every individual to hear it. But Zachor is an exception. With Zachor, there is a specific commandment that every individual has to hear this passage being read in order to fulfill the mitzvah of remembering Amalek. That's why in today's email, you should see a video link where you can click and hear that reading. But the question is, why, of all the verses in the Torah, is it these three that get this special attention? There are so many important commandments and instructions in the Torah. You can pick your favorite. The Shema, the Song at the Sea, the Ten Commandments, but it is this reading about blotting out the memory of Amalek that receives special emphasis. Not just that, but of all the 613 mitzvot in the Torah, it is only with regards to this mitzvah of wiping out Amalek that the Torah tells us, Lo tishkach, do not forget it. So why this one? It's not like we Jews consider ourselves to be a warlike people, and we certainly believe in forgiveness. Well, from the narrative in Exodus, you might think that the emphasis has to do with a military victory. The lesson is that Jews have to have faith in God's ability and in our ability to annihilate our enemies, and that's what we have to remember. And that could be, but I would like to suggest an alternative explanation. It requires us looking into the three verses in Deuteronomy that comprise the Zachor reading in a bit of detail. These verses point, I think, to a particular detail that is really important. Remember what Amalek did to you on your journey after you left Egypt, how undeterred by fear of God, he surprised you on the march when you were famished and weary, and cut down all the stragglers in your rear. Vayizanev becha kol hanecheshalim acharecha. I think it's that word stragglers, necheshalim, that helps us understand what this story is really about, what it's here to teach us. Who were these stragglers? Well, the rabbis say that necheshalim is an inversion of nechelashim, meaning the weak ones. The 10th century scholar Rav Sadia Gaon says that they were the kitzonim, the folks on the margins. The 12th century rabbi Joseph Bechor Shor says that these people were easily preyed upon. He imagines that Amalek attracted them by posing as merchants, and while they were caught in negotiations and falling further behind, that's when Amalek pounced upon them. But really all of these interpretations have something in common. They paint a picture of Amalek that almost makes it seem as if they were very weak. They knew that they could not defeat the totality of a united people, even a group of former slaves. But they figured that if they could break the group apart, they would successfully be able to attack and defeat the weak ones at the rear. In this context, I think the mitzvah of listening to this story makes more sense. Because it is not just that Amalek is evil or cowardly or eager to attack. the evil of this episode is also that our Israelite ancestors left so many people at the margins, left so many people vulnerable to attack. Our ancestors were marching along. They were celebrating a miracle at the Red Sea, complaining that they didn't have water or food, and then that the manna they had wasn't good enough because they wanted meat and they wanted more. But all the while, the truly vulnerable among them were sitting ducks. The rabbis expound that this commandment to remember is the essence of Judaism. Follow it and experience the promises, all of them, due to the children of Abraham. Let it go and descend to the level of servitude in Egypt. The near defeat against Amalek gets to the core of Judaism. We can't just worry about ourselves. Liberty and opportunity and personal success, which are the things we worship in our culture, they are great, but they are insufficient. We have a mandate and a divine responsibility to protect the people at the margins, those who are not able to protect themselves. It is the second part of Hillel's famous dictum, Uchshe'ani le'atzmi, ma ani. If I am only out for myself, what am I? We can apply this lesson that taught in the story of the Amalekites to other evils in our midst. If there's a war or a natural disaster happening, it is not enough just to fight. We must also protect its most likely victims. If there's a disease we're fighting against, like cancer or heart disease, it's not enough just to do research. We have to be seeking out those most vulnerable, particularly the poor, and try to protect them as much as we can by making sure that they have access to quality care before they get sick. And social distancing, it's great, but it's not enough. We have to worry about the people who really are distanced, who have no one to take care of their needs, people who don't have an income that will help them get through tough times. And it is not enough for us to decide who gets vaccinated first. It's an interesting conversation, but we have to worry most about those for whom access to a vaccination clinic is very difficult, no matter where they are on that list. And here I have to give a shout out to my friend and colleague, Rabbi Danny Gabadi Esko, who has been leading a really successful effort in Boston to make sure every elderly Holocaust survivor in the city can get to a vaccination clinic quickly and safely. When Toronto gets its turn for vaccines, and let's hope it comes soon, I hope we can follow her example. No matter what the problem, no matter what illness or ailment is facing us as a people or as a society, it is a Jew's responsibility to find the people at the margins, to find the nechashalim, and to look out for them. And this helps us understand, by the way, one of the core mitzvot of Purim, called matanot la'evyonim, gifts to the poor. That mitzvah is not just there by accident. Its presence actually has a message that is core to the holiday and core to Parashat Zachor, and that is that it is not enough to celebrate the victory over evil Haman. We have to affirm our responsibility to look out for those who are most vulnerable in our community and to do something about it. That's Matanot Levyonim. Now I hope this helps us understand the importance of these three verses. If understood in context, I think they really do represent the moral essence of Judaism. And we have a personal obligation to hear that commandment every year, to remember what our ancestors did, to remember what they failed to do, to remember what happened to them as a result, and to learn from their experience. Let's try to make our celebrations of Purim this week fun and meaningful, and we should remember that even though this is a difficult time, we can all achieve what Esther herself achieved in accepting the responsibility to stand up for the necheshalim, the vulnerable ones in her midst, and look out ourselves for the vulnerable ones in our time, in our place, in our community, in the Jewish world and beyond, for there are many who are deeply in need of our voices. And to this we can say, Lo tishkach, we will not forget them. Wishing you all Shabbat Shalom.